right. She is a noisy one.
Help me! Help me! Please, please, no, please, please, no.
Stop! Stop fighting. Stop fighting!
You're feeling that D6 power as you take moving on.
Hey, what's wrong, baby?
Hello. Why does everybody fear the reptilians so much? How do you see so much angst and hatred against reptilians, and I don't even see a reason why, honestly.
Moving on.
Hey, what's wrong, baby?
And all I want to do is reach out to those who want to make friends with some reptilians.
What's your problem?
What are you, man? What are you? Shapeshifter? Body snatcher?
I've got one that can see.
One of the most frightening encounters to come to light was a case related by UFO researchers Sherry Hinkle and her late sister Phyllis Carla Davis in early 2001. Carla was reportedly approached by a woman named Angie, who related a terrifying story that happened to her while hiking the Superstitious Mountains in Phoenix, Arizona, sometime in the mid to late 90s. According to Angie, it was March, and she had 3 days off from work. She elected to use her mini vacation to get outside and hike the mountains near her home in Phoenix. One of Carla's hobbies was to collect various interesting rocks off the mountain. Over the years, she had managed to establish a nice collection of rose quartz, turquoise, and other sparkly stones of varying shapes. On this day, Angie had sighted a shiny object at the edge of a small canyon she was hiking through. It was late in the day, and Angie knew if she wanted to get the object and get back to her car before nightfall, she was going to have to speed it up. Reaching the rim of the canyon, she realized that the white quartz she had sighted was far too big to carry back with her. All that struggle to climb the mountain with nary any reward, Angie was disappointed. She decided to sit down and break off a small piece of the quartz. That's when she spotted a small cave part way up the opposite side of the canyon. She decided to check it out and slid down the mountain and began her ascent up the opposite wall. The pocket-sized flashlight she carried with her did little to illuminate the opening, which looked more like an overhang than a cave. She ventured inside, examining the floor for rocks. The lack of bones or animal carcasses indicated that it was probably okay to take a seat and catch her breath. She sipped from her canteen and rested. As she got up to leave, she spotted something shiny on the ground. Leaning over to inspect it, she was startled to see a green claw reach out and grab her. She felt the cold grip and immediately pulled up, peering into the face of the person grabbing her. The person had a reptilian face. Angie could only chuckle. She assumed that the person was wearing a mask. She wondered if it was her friend Charlie playing a prank. In those strange seconds, it began to dawn on Angie that the reptilian-looking face in front of her was not a mask. Rather, it was real. What the hell was this thing holding her? She screamed in terror, and then blackness consumed her. She fainted from fright. When she woke up, she heard strange barking and chirping sounds near her ears. When she attempted to get up, she realized that she couldn't move. Her body was immersed in a gelatinous substance. Those strange barking and chirping sounds she heard were voices. These creatures, whatever they were speaking to each other. She felt a hand on the inside of her leg. Opening her eyes, she saw that she was surrounded by a group of men with lizard-like faces. She felt her heart sinking. Far more frightening than any nightmare, this was very real, and she knew that she would not be able to simply wake up. Her attempts to scream came out as stifled gurgles. She watched as several greenish reptilian men attempted to disrobe her. Unable to believe what she was seeing, Angie studied these creatures. To her, they seemed to be a strange blend of human and serpent. They had wide eyes which appeared to glow with a yellowish brightness, with glistening, straight-sided vertical pupils. Their broad, flat noses ended in flat nostrils that flared slightly as they snorted while examining her. Some of them had a very wide mouth with many folds of skin, while some had smaller mouths with no folds. Angie wondered if the extra folds showed their age. Their small, rounded ears, which were set high on their head, had no lobes. There were 3 prominent ridges on the top of their cone-like heads that resembled large scales. She noticed that the scales were a different color than the skin on the head, more like a khaki green that tapered to a gray green on the back of the head. Their faces were smooth, with narrow chins that were pointed rather than rounded. 2 aliens wore either a gray scarf or a wide ribbon draped over their shoulder. Under the soft-looking ribbons, they wore a white jumpsuit with insignia that showed a curved dragon with a 7-point star in the middle of it. The other reptile men wore black uniforms with the same insignia. There was a tall, white-skinned lizard man, not unlike the one sighted at Dulce. He was taller than the others, standing at 7 feet. He wore a burnt orange jumpsuit with 3 insignia on the left side. There was a black inverted triangle, the round dragon with the star, and an oval with moving stars in it. Angie was fascinated by this one. To her, it was like watching a 3D movie in miniature. On the right side of the uniform were 3 black bars on a silver disc. On the left cuff of his sleeve, he wore a row of inverted triangles with 3 lines cutting through it. The white-skinned alien stood beside her right shoulder. This man with the white skin had blue eyes. Naked and helpless, Angie pleaded with him for help. She noted that his eyes seemed gentler. As if understanding this, the being picked up a round box and held it near her head. Something cold touched her forehead, and she felt a wave of peace wash over her. No longer fearful, Angie watched them with a strange calmness. Trying to deny her predicament, still half convinced she was being held by a group of pranksters, she looked past the men trying to determine where she was being held. A counter or bench with instruments and appliances was visible from the corner of her eyes. She strained to turn her head, but it wouldn't move. She looked to her right, beyond the tall white man, and noticed pipes with strange sacks, or maybe misshapen balloons hanging from them. While staring at these bags, it dawned on her that they were moving. It reminded her of the way her pregnant dog's belly moved when it was full term. This horrified her. Deep inside her mind she wanted to panic, but couldn't. It was like there were 2 minds inside of her. One was calm, the other horror-stricken. The calm was in charge of her body. She could feel the unhurried beating of her heart much more easily than she could feel the terror welling up in her mind. Angie watched as one of the lizard men undressed and approached the table. He was muscular and had scales on his chest and lower stomach. He also had a penis, and it was fully erect. When his green-gray hands touched her, there was no doubt in her mind what he was going to do. It was too much. Angie began to scream and found superhuman strength with which to fight off the jello-like feeling. Kicking and biting like a wild animal, she lashed out, hitting anyone near her. Angie watched with a detached curiosity as one of the lizard men undressed. One of the lizard men produced a blue light which rendered her near unconscious. She could feel the weight of the creature and the sick awareness that it was penetrating her. She eventually passed out. When Angie awoke, she was back in her car. She was confused. She couldn't remember how she got there. She knew that something had happened, but could not recall what. She drove home feeling dazed and disorganized. She spent 2 hours scrubbing her body in the shower when she returned home for reasons that she couldn't quite comprehend. She felt shaky and angry, but didn't know why. For the next few days, she locked herself away inside her home, barely eating. On the 4th day, her sister Susan let herself in with an emergency key Angie had given her 2 months ago. Susan took her sister to a doctor who said it was just the flu and that she would be fine in a few days. Susie took Angie home with her, and refusing to listen to any protests, she put her to bed. During the week of her stay, Susan noticed that Angie had several nightmares every night, from which she woke up screaming. When Susan suggested they go hiking in the mountain, Angie flatly refused. Back at work, Angie became overwhelmed when a customer brought a lizard into the store she worked at. Usually lizards didn't bother her, but for whatever reason, this creature terrified her. She ended up quitting her job. Angie realized that whatever happened to her in the desert was probably the root of her problem, so she sought out a hypnotist in Phoenix to assist her. During the first session, she discovered that she had been raped. It took 2 more sessions to bring out exactly who, or rather what, raped her. The therapist at first thought she was transferring the man who had raped her to the reptilian man in an attempt to refuse reality. Over time, however, he realized that, as strange as this was, Angie believed that she had been raped by a reptilian man. His training had left him ill-equipped to handle this kind of case, but he continued with the sessions anyway. Today, Angie leads a quiet, normal existence in a small town near Phoenix. She will not talk about the case and refuses all interviews. She also refuses to go back into the mountains.